God told me when I was 22 that I'd be speaking to people from a stage, teaching them how to take back ownership of their life. We have given Satan too much power in the schools, in our homes, in our head. The power of a man and a woman pulling a family, which is going to create generational futures. I really want to empower men to understand their role in the family, to empower women to go back a little bit to the biblical definition of what it is to be a wife and a mom, and then to understand that it's actually easier. Being alone is so hard, and we are a lonely society.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Audacious Faith Podcast. It's so great to be with you as always. We've been having some fantastic guests as of late, and today we have another one. I'm so excited, actually. She's coming all the way from New Jersey. Now, maybe where you're seeing this, that may be close to you. I'm out in Southern California. And she does a lot of things. She's a family person. She works a lot with teens. She also does financial literacy. She just has a whole bunch of things in her toolkit that she's going to be sharing with us today. So I'm excited to have Dawn Heerema with me. I said that correct, right?
Yep, you got it.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. So Dawn, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about you, for those who are not familiar, maybe just a little bit of your background, a little bit about your family, and possibly how faith is an important part of your life as well.
Yeah. Well, faith from the get-go has always been a big part of my life. So I was raised in a church. My dad and mom, very big church members, running the church basically. But it took me a while to find my faith. And so I believe I was saved, but I was in a discovery process for too many years. So I really struggled through high school. Ended up becoming a high school teacher, which I think there's some irony there.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I do love working with high schoolers. So for a hot minute, I did work with younger kids, and I realized my calling was with grown-ups. I teach ESL and ELL and GED classes, but I really do love working in the high school. So I became certified to teach English and then personal finance, which is where the finance came in.
Mhm.
And I've worked as church school director. I've worked for nonprofits, teaching women. And I adore it. And then through the pandemic, I actually had 3 international students from China living with me in our
Oh, wow.
home,
Okay.
locked down. It was wild. And I just watched my students, because we were only one of the schools that was population was only 6% of students in New Jersey were in classrooms during COVID, and
Okay.
we were part of it. So we were actually in the classroom, and I watched the mental health decline in real time. Like, trying to do it remote was really hard, but then when we came back, it was really evident to me that if I had kids in person, how hard was it for kids who were home? So I decided to go back to school and become a certified life coach. So that's what I do. I love it. I've got a company right now. It's Self Foundry.
Mhm.
So Self Foundry Coaching with Dawn, and it's a Christian-based company where I help parents and teenagers, students who are struggling with vaping or who are depressed, anxious, some students dropping out of school with their, like, not even getting their high school diploma. We're trying to get them back on board, on program, adulting. I just love it because kids are resilient. We just have to tap into that, and parents have to have hope that their kids are not going to be stuck forever. So that's my love, and God's just fueled it all the way.
Awesome. I love where you're coming from. As I started the ministry years ago, it was youth ministry focused. And even to this day, I've coached now in a local high school girls basketball for over 20 years. So I'm still doing that. And
Mm,
I'm seeing exactly what you were just talking about, those changes, especially since the COVID era. And I was quite surprised, really, at the huge effect that that seemed to have on teens. I would have thought, just from an outside perspective, that, of course, the more vulnerable people health-wise were the older adults, and yet it seems that many teens, even now, still seem to be dealing with a lot of fear, a
mm.
lot of anxiety. So that's what you're encountering a lot of, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's permeated so many aspects of their life, though. Millennials, they grew up with just so many blessings. The economy was booming and there weren't a ton of threats. They didn't really suffer. But this is a generation, the Gen Z, they're the ones born 1997-ish to 2012. They've
Yeah.
experienced two economic recessions. They've watched real political upheaval. They don't remember calm. They really don't. And
Yeah.
they've watched their parents grappling. And the messaging was stay home, isolate, lock down. You're going to die. And if you don't die, mom's going to die. And if mom doesn't die, you're going to kill grandma. Like the messaging was wild. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden one day we're like, oops, okay, it's over. You can just go do life again. And the kids are like, I don't trust adults. I don't trust the government. I don't trust medical professionals. Like the mistrust, I think, is really at the core of them. They can't even trust themselves. They don't know why they feel the way they feel. And they're like, everybody tells me I should be normal, but what is normal anymore? And it's a very jaded group of kids, but I think they're set up to be the best, like greatest, most resilient generation if we can
Mhm.
tap into that. I mean, the bigger the adversary, the stronger the superhero. So we have a group of kids that are set up. I mean, if we can tap in and we got to get out of the way. Parents with our issues, we got to like get out of the way and let God because
Mhm.
God's got something in store for this generation of kids. I really believe it. It's really
Yeah.
cool.
You're bringing up a great point there, the parents and all of this with the getting out of the way. And you said about the parent issues.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how much you're seeing this because obviously so many families are dysfunctional
Mm,
today. And one thing that I've noticed that I've always had a problem with in ministry is that when parents are having issues, even with separations, divorces,
mm,
all those type of things, I think what's really sad is when they keep bringing that onto the kids, like it's
mm.
the kids' situation.
Yeah.
Like you'll see a father saying, "Well, your mom does this and she does this and she does," and it's like that's not the kid's problem in my thinking. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? That's your problem.
Oh,
Um,
but it's a generational cyclical problem.
right.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, I know that maybe it's just the way I mean, I was raised in a different generation. I'm sure my mom and dad had struggles, but for the most part, I didn't see a lot of
Mm.
it. You know what I'm saying? And as we were raising our kids, we had things that we were trying to work through, but we didn't put those problems on them. And so are you finding that now that so many seem to be not even adults getting their own footing and it's just keeping the kids in chaos and uncertainty?
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's really tough. I think this is the first time we have had messaging coming in from every culture on the internet. And
Hmm.
we don't all agree on mental health. We don't all see eye to eye. I mean, even the DSM, I mean, they're on version 5 and it has edits and updates. That's basically the Bible of mental health. I mean, it is the medical dictionary of what is going on in our brain.
Right.
And honestly, human brains are God's most complex and intricate creation, and they're trying to put it in a book and explain
Hmm.
it. And then we have a population, adults really were the first. These are millennial parents and young Gen X, maybe Zennials, you might want to call them. Like I'm a Zennial. We're very quick to Google, like, Google doctor, like what's wrong with me? But so
Right.
many times I have kids tell me what's wrong with them. I said, where'd you get that from? Oh, the internet. I found out, like I looked up my symptoms, I figured it out. And here's what happens is when we identify as something, as a disorder, as a group, a subgroup, a category, our brain loves that. Our brain feels so safe when we lock into a group. We love to subsection our population. So I belong here. And if the family doesn't feel strong, like we don't identify as being part of the Smith family. If that name has been weakened, what do
Hmm.
you belong to? You have to find your family. I mean, this is like the foundation of gang belonging and stuff like that. So we essentially have a group of people online who have been trying to figure out what's wrong with me when frankly, what's wrong with you is you are living in the human condition.
Hmm.
You're in a broken world. Like you are fine operating in brokenness amidst evil and chaos. And yeah, it's hard and we're not supposed to do it perfectly, but that's where when we are weak, God is strong. And so when we're trying to figure it out, we want to belong to something. We want to feel normal. And so if our normal is abnormal, at least I have a name for it. At least I belong somewhere. So when the family unit is not strong, we do find this stepping in of other belongings. And I think that's where the danger is that's what Satan does. He loves to conquer and divide and make us weak and alone, and then we get very fractioned as a group. I mean, you even see it in the churches, how we're
Sure.
divided on topics. So it's really powerful. And once kids just start to like really understand, you're looking at a very human, earthly thing, and that is not necessarily truth. You have to weigh it against biblical truth. And so figuring out what exactly is it, there is a lot in scripture that tells us how Satan is attacking our mind. That's the
Right.
battleground. And then how to armor it, how to protect it. I mean, we see King David struggling with mental health. We've got King Saul dealing with demons. You've got Jesus learning how to walk through life and actually encountering Satan, and how does he use the Bible? How does he live and lean into his relationship with his maker? It's incredible. I mean, it really is the most powerful self-help book. And kids need to like stop looking at the internet for these human designs and really
Right.
start to look at what is going on in the Bible. How do I fit into that narrative? What do I need to use to heal myself and navigate through this?
Well, what you're saying here, I think is tying in the pattern that I'm kind of ask you about right now,
Mm.
because you're talking about a generation that, for the most part, especially in the public school system, has been indoctrinated, it seems, away from God, away from the
Mm.
Bible. A big effort to try to keep all of that out of there. Yet, isn't it true that spiritually, it seems the more that tries to be taken away, often there then becomes more of a hunger and a thirst for
Mm.
that meaning, which you're bringing up right now. You're mentioning terms and identification. I'm hearing like things referred to now in ways that I think never before. Like I'll have a teenager come up to me and say, "Well, it's just, I'm dealing with my anxiety," almost like it's
Mm.
a personal pet,
So
you know?
alone. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
And it's, I don't, I mean,
Nurtured.
yeah, I've heard
Like,
people say before, well, I get anxious, but my anxiety just sounds more like
yeah.
a partner that's always there with you. You know what I mean? And,
They
uh,
don't say that about my anger or
right.
my joy. They don't own any other emotion, but anxious is an emotion and a state of being. I agree. It's like they almost want to have it.
Yeah. And it's almost like these are the reasons why I do what I do, or why I
Mm.
am struggling the way that I do.
Like
Uh,
fact, right? Like a fact bomb. Like,
yeah.
no, that's why.
Exactly. And would you say then, from a since you have both perspectives here, um, from a spiritual standpoint, I mean, if we look at Philippians chapter 4, what does it tell us to do with anxiety? It says, instead of being anxious with those
Mhm.
situations, go to God with those situations. That's what you do
Mhm.
with it. So is the problem just becoming more of a problem because the more distant and the more void God is in the culture?
Is it becoming more of a problem? How do we know it wasn't always a problem?
Well, I think it always has been, but
Yeah,
how do you
like just more
live with it?
talked about. I
Right.
mean, I cannot imagine that Paul, after murdering and torturing so many people and having that guilt, like how did he not move forward in anxiety and
Mhm.
dealing with anxiousness? We don't even know what the thorn in his side was. I mean, we have no idea what people dealt with. And I think I think what we need to remember is what happens when we're anxious is it creates an effect in our body.
Mhm.
So when we keep feeding that fire, the thought of I am anxious, this is my anxiety caused X, Y, and Z, one, we feel very helpless. It's a
Mhm.
very helpless feeling when you feel like, no, it's my anxiety that's causing this. Because then
Mhm.
it's a very reactive thing, and I can't fix that. I can't fix something that's not within my control. But if we understand the anxiousness, that anxiety that kids and adults, frankly, are feeling, it's caused by a physiological reaction to a thought. So what we're actually doing is reinforcing a thought that keeps creating a feeling that then has physical repercussions. So once we start to break it down, and what I do with people as a brain-based life coach, that's what I do, is I help them to isolate, like, what exactly is it that caused the anxious thought? And then figure out, what did you think that's triggered this like spiraling down? Because we can't change a circumstance.
Sure.
Right? If I have cancer, I have cancer. It's just a
Right.
fact, right? How we think about the cancer is what is within our control. Because if my thought is, for instance, I just listened to Don Wickham today. He is a stage 4 cancer survivor, and he has he was on the I Am Second. He's a powerful speaker. He came to speak at my school where I work. And he had to come up with a thought about cancer that was not anxious creating, but instead mobilizing and empowering, because he realized, but I have another day. I just have to show up for one more day. I don't know how many days I'm going to get. None of us do. But he had to find an empowering thought that created the feeling in him that he could go on another day, that he could create a life that he would appreciate and love. Because it's so, so easy to become a victim. I'm a victim of my anxiety. And then that's so small, if that makes sense. Like, you feel very small, and you can't really work through that. So that's when you kind of give into the thinking that you have no control. And that's really not true, because I've had kids that I've worked with who couldn't even drive due to anxiety, had to drop out of school, had too many absences, they were failing classes, and like, really it was a thought. And once we locked into the thought and rewrote the thought, the downward spiral, the trickle effect is powerful, really
Yeah.
powerful. You can do
So
hard things. You can face anxiety. You can do things with anxiety.
right. So you're talking about that mental thought kind of defining who you are and all of that. So I'm thinking of, say, the addict, the alcoholic, for example, who keeps going. And I have no problem with 12-step programs, but the one problem that I do have, that I've kind of disagreed with from a biblical standpoint, is for a person to be saying the rest of their life, I'm an alcoholic. And I'm thinking to myself, isn't there a point where you may say, I need to stay away from that because I struggle with it, but that's not who I choose to be starting now? Doesn't there have to be a shift somewhere, or you're always defined that way?
It's tough. I mean, I'm always a sinner, right? So
Right.
if you're viewing it as a sin, then maybe there's some ownership there, that it is a sin giving into my dirt body, my dirt man physical body. But
Hmm.
if you're also not giving that opportunity for God to say, but I've made you new.
Right.
There's a new man, that new creation. And honestly, I can give somebody such a powerful thought that they will forever be changed. Sometimes it's just one thought and you can never go back because you can't unhear it. So sometimes there's such a huge catalysm, like a huge turning point, that they just needed to have one new thought. And so maybe it works to say, for some people, I'm an alcoholic because, yes, I am a sinner. I'm in this body that is weak.
Yeah.
However, I can be made new. What does that mean as kingdom believers, as people who believe that God is living within us? I mean, you can't deny that the Holy Spirit is not more powerful than any of our sin urges.
Right.
I mean, I have gotten over urges that I had when I was 20 that I don't have today.
Hmm.
What is that? It's just another urge,
Right. Okay.
really. I mean, and if you give it that kind of power, that this is just one more urge that I have overcome in the past big urges, and I'm going to overcome more. I mean, have I had the urge to just punch somebody? Yeah, I don't do that. I
Right.
haven't, I've held back from saying something mean when I've had something mean said to me. Like, we all control urges on the daily. I mean, we're not like walking around just like tripping people we don't like. Like, we control ourselves.
Exactly. But
So
the
if you
thought does
kind of,
occur to us at
it
times.
does. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, and for some of us, it's going to be a compulsive thought on
Mhm.
repeat. And it does have the chemical reaction to it. I don't think that any of us can deny that the phone isn't a new urge. because it's creating a chemical release in our body. It's creating dopamine. It's addictive. Sugar,
Right.
highly addictive.
Well, you bring up a big one now. So especially as you're focusing on youth, young adults, and everything, the phone has changed the game, really, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Uh, I remember back being a young person and wondering, oh, are people hanging out right now? I wonder
Mm.
who's doing what. I wonder what people are thinking. Now you see it.
You
I
see
mean,
it on a map. You can see
yeah,
all my friends are at this dot.
yeah, and I'm not.
Map mats.
What,
Mm-mm.
either I'm not because I wasn't allowed to, or why wasn't I invited? Why
Yeah.
did I post this and nobody's responding?
Mm.
Uh, there seems to be an added dimension on hyperdrive from where we once were in another generation
Yeah.
of things that we just used to wonder about, and now we're seeing them. Uh,
Yeah.
so that, yeah, and you talk about the spiritual warfare that goes into it, which I know you bring a lot into that. So
Mm.
how do you see the forces of evil using these tools to push
Mm.
those buttons?
Well, Satan loves to take something good and
Hmm.
just tweak, right? So I'm not saying the phone is not amazing. And that's something we have to be
Yeah,
honest with the kids. I mean, that this stupid thing is a tool
yeah, it
forever.
is.
It's a tool, it connects us, it gives us access to amazing content and makes, frankly, my job even possible.
Yeah.
But but we do have to just recognize, and I think that's like a new level of discerning. I think kids, unfortunately, are being asked to discern at a much earlier age, which I believe is really unfair. I think parents need to take back the ownership
Yeah.
of discerning for their kids a lot longer than they are.
Yeah, that's the difference I noticed. So when I was raising our kids, when me and my wife were doing that, there
How
were
old are your
decisions.
kids, by the way?
Well, now they're older. So I've got my oldest one is 35, and then I have
Okay.
like a 32 and a 29.
Okay, so this is pre-phone as a teenager. Okay.
Yeah, well, they were starting to get it, but the technology
Mhm.
was nowhere
There's
near.
nothing there.
Yeah, I mean, it was just
Mhm.
more like text messaging and things like that. But
Yeah.
so we would make decisions, right? There were certain
Mhm.
things we don't know. You're not watching that. You're
Yeah.
not going to do that. You're not watching this particular station. You're not watching these particular shows. We would try to filter that out, and then occasionally we would be frustrated because they go over to a friend's house or whatever, and
Mhm.
they'd be watching stuff over there that we normally wouldn't want them to, and that was
Mhm.
a little frustration. Well, now all that stuff's out the window.
Mhm.
It seems that I mean, there's just an open avenue right
Yeah.
there for just about anything to get there that you can't filter anymore unless, like you said, you take
Yeah.
some control. And then that
Yeah.
becomes a major war, I know.
It's tough. So, and I'm not anti-phone. I do think there needs to be discerning on the parents' part. So, I don't believe that kids need to have full access to the internet at a young age. I'm kind of horrified when and I'm gonna make some parents squirm, but when we're in a restaurant and little kids are just watching shows and stuff, it starts then. It starts with replacing the serotonin we get from a face-to-face interaction, seeing somebody smile and feeling that connection that we know God created us to be in community. So right away, we put a screen in front of a moment for that child to be with you. And like,
Hmm.
I just want them to know it started already. You've already started the addiction and you've started replacing serotonin, which is going to counter depression and anxiety. And you're replacing it with a dopamine hit, an addictive hit of dopamine, which is fake and doesn't give you the same serotonin boost. So that's the first. And then it just kind of trickles out. I mean, parents are tired. We've never
Hmm.
had two family working homes at this level with such exorbitant prices. I mean, I can see New York City from here. You can't get into a house for less than $500,000, and that needs $100,000 of work. I mean, this is
Sure.
a very expensive area. And, you know, it's parents are really grinding, and my heart breaks for them because it's tiring. But this is
Right.
not the place to drop your guard. And so, what I have is a tech contract, and you can actually go on my website. It's www.selffoundry.com, and you can get into my email, and I give you all kinds of free resources. One of them is a tech contract because I think kids need to be on technology, but you have to know your child. So, the average teenager, there's a sweet spot. 2 to 4 hours seems to be where kids have less anxiety, less depression, less social issues, but are still connected. So that's the key. You want them to connect because this is how the kids connect today. They have to be in the loop, they have to know. But like you said, you don't want them always 24/7 trying to figure out what their friends are socially doing. They need to become creators, not consumers. So if they're not off the phone, then all they're doing is taking and taking and taking. And that's not God's design for us. We're designed to work, we're designed to give value, we're designed to impact people for his kingdom. So when we have given them a phone for too many hours uncensored, that's when they start to lose that drive to create serotonin, to make a connection, to do things that are going to be basically what we're built for. That's our purpose, is to work. And so you don't want them to just be sucking from gaming and social media. But 2 hours is a good amount of time. They say 2 to 4 so that they have a life. They feel connected. They're not missing everything, if that makes sense. But that takes work on the parents' part to maintain and manage. And they have to be on the same page. This is what I'm seeing. Mom and dad are not on the same page.
Right.
That's a lack of unity in marriage. So much of this comes down to a marriage issue. And it's more like the roles have not been well defined, and the parents are just kind of like muddying their way through it, and they're exhausted. They're exhausted because women traditionally would have had a lot of the social home rules that they would have been enforcing, and then the men wouldn't have even been in the house. But now you've got two parents out of the house.
Right.
Somebody has to pick up the slack. So that's where we need to help men. Not that I'm picking on men. It's like nobody asked for this. Nobody really thought it through. Like, hey, who's going to discipline the kids? Who's going to watch them on the phone? Nobody thought about that in the 80s. You know, we were wild running around like hooligans.
Yeah, exactly.
And that just like now we're like, oh, so now that was really good, by the way. When we were running around wild like hooligans, we were together. Whether you were invited out or not, you were out. You weren't allowed home.
Right.
So even the unwanted, socially unwanted, as they would define today in their brain, they had to be out and figure out how to socialize. And we had to figure out how to embrace people who are not like us. We didn't invite them, they just came. And it was much more forgiving. It was a much kinder world in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But now you don't have to hang out with people you don't want to.
Right. And it can also be, it can be brutal, the response, the online, the bullying, the canceling, I mean, everyone of every age, I think, is dealing with that to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it definitely is a different world. I know what you're bringing up. I'm thinking to myself, because right now we have two kids that have been in our church for a long time. The whole family got messed up. The kids were getting yanked away. So now they're with us in what's called foster care, because it was either that or they were separated. And the tablet, they love to be on the tablet. And this is what, and it was easier at first, just like you're saying. You're tired, you're doing other things. It's like, okay, yeah, just entertain yourself, right? But then, I mean, it was starting to bother me, because like if there was a day that they would literally be on this thing for hours and hours and hours and interacting. And then these kids and some of their classmates, we have a Christian school here. And so they come to school the next day tired.
Yes.
And
they're the most tired generation to ever walk the earth.
Right. And it's like, and you didn't do your homework because you're tired. You didn't do your homework because you guys were online talking to each other and fooling around, doing all this stuff for hours and hours. So finally, I felt mean, but finally we had to, right in that range we were talking about, I think we set it for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And not after a certain time. I think it was like 9 o'clock or something like that, or not, you know, and it's like, it cuts off.
So what changed? Did anything change for the better or for the worse?
No, it's better. I mean, they're doing better in school. They're actually getting some work done. They actually I've seen an improvement, really.
Oh, awesome.
And so, I mean, I don't think they would not impose those limits on themselves, obviously, but
Oh, no.
But
I mean, if you put a cake in front of a kid, they're going to eat as much as they can until they feel sick. It's
yeah,
just that's what we all do. We just
yeah,
learn our limits as adults. But how many adults have over 6 hours or whatever on all the devices?
true. Yeah,
It's a
I get the
lot.
screen time notifications on my phone sometimes, and it's kind of
Yeah.
I'll use the excuse that I'm being productive, but yeah,
Yeah, as I get older, what I realize is that if I'm consuming, which frankly screen time is often consuming, I just want to be careful what I'm consuming because
right,
that to me is that boundary of like where Satan's playing. So if I'm listening to music, what am I consuming that is the music? If I'm listening to podcasts, what is the content of the podcast? Just trying to figure that out instead of doom. It's the doom scrolling though that really it's making them stupider. Their
yeah,
short-term attention is very short. It used
right.
to be like I remember like 20 years ago, they were like, kids can't focus for more than 10 minutes. I will take a child today who can focus for 10 minutes. Like that's shocking when I get kids who can focus for 10 minutes. It's more like 20 seconds.
Yeah, because of all that constant, the little reels, the little shorts, so they don't even
Mhm.
watch. I was doing some research in like YouTube and things like that, and with the YouTube videos, and I was finding this was actually a little disappointing. Some of the stuff that I was putting out there, I was looking at the analytics,
Mm.
and I was finding that the on some of them the average view time was
Mhm.
9 seconds, and it's
Whoa.
what in the world? It's like that. So
They just
somebody
saw
has,
your heading. They just saw the
yeah, it's
title.
like okay, what? I better say it quick in the first 5, 6 seconds, or you're gone.
Yeah. But
And
that's why sensationalism is becoming such a big thing. I mean, because you're trying to catch them and hook them
right
and hold them. Yeah.
now, let's shift a little bit here. I saw in one of your videos you posted online, you were talking about AI a little bit,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
I know that's I've been using some of that myself for like productivity,
Yeah.
because it's a game changer when it's
Yeah.
used the right way.
Yeah.
Uh, but how is that affecting? I mean, obviously that's a tool that can be great, or it's a tool that can go the other way. So, how is that new part of the game, which is becoming more and more accessible? What are you seeing there?
For kids or for parents?
Well, I think you can go into both if you like. Go ahead.
Yeah. We're going to have some real conversations as a nation of what do we want our kids to be able to do?
Hmm.
Because frankly, AI can write a paper, it can summarize, it can take a book and give it to you in 15 minutes, all the key pieces. It can create art. It's going to be a game changer. However, as a parent, there's going to be some things that we want the kids to be able to do. Like at one point, we took away teaching them how to read a clock because we thought it was stupid. Everybody can just read a digital clock, it's no big deal. The
Right,
reality is, knowing how to read the clock shows you a passing of time. Kids
right,
today, their prefrontal cortex is underdeveloped. They're seeing statistically it's about 2 to 3 years slower than it was at our in our age when we
mm,
were their age. So like if you go back to the 80s and the 90s, we were 2 to 3 years more developed up here. There's actually signs of trauma and different parts of the brain are actually scanning different sizes compared to pre-COVID. So we have like serious effects on the brain right now. What we need to figure out is what are the skills that the kids need to know and hold on to that they are going to be able to one day use AI to help them, but they need to understand what AI is doing.
right,
So, how to develop an argument? At what point, yes, AI can develop an argument for you. It can create an outline and help you find research. And we're dealing with baby AI. I mean, AI, yes, it's maturing faster than they expected. But
uh,
this baby AI, I mean, we're looking at maybe a 20 something year old, is what they're saying. So
uh,
it's growing and developing really, really fast. What are we going to have when AI is wise and 65? Like what is that going to look like? It's going to be really interesting. And I don't think schools are keeping up, mainly because we're busy. We are so busy. We're like on trauma and doing CPR on these kids. And we're like, somebody has to figure this out because yes, they're going home and they're writing a paper. And yes, we have AI checks and we can scan it and it tells us how much of this was created by AI. But okay, we can scan for American AI. It's very hard to scan for international foreign software. So all of this, it's like we're playing cops all the time. We're trying to catch the kids using AI. And the reality is they should want to learn. They should be excited to use their brain. And there's something going on. We need to really do a game shifting conversation and it needs to happen like 5 years ago, which I've been yelling about because I'm like, we need to catch up. But it's hard. It's super hard. I think
Right.
I can say that this is the last generation that I think will be sitting in traditional classrooms. I don't think school is going to look like this for the next generation of
Yeah,
kids.
it's probably going to change pretty quick. And I know that, I mean, I'm looking, listening to what you're saying right here. And to me, it brings up, this is a very simplistic parallel. But back when I was younger and we were doing math, and it's like, no, you're not allowed to use the calculator,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know? And then I get to be an adult and we're teaching, and it's like, let them use the calculator. It's like, wait a minute, you can't use the
yeah.
calculator. You won't know how to do it.
They bring
And
the calculator to the SAT. We
right.
use the calculator, right? Like, what?
So it's a whole
Yeah.
different thing now. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like sacrilegious to say that you could use a calculator because you're supposed to be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, and now we're seeing the same thing with AI, and I'm wondering how they even detect that, because I know that I can basically get my AI to do any style that I want. I can change it. I can get it in my own words. I could, so
Yeah.
I would think it'd be very difficult.
It's getting harder to catch the good cheaters. We keep
Yeah.
catching the ones that are pretty bad at it. No, because I can say, write an essay on To Kill a Mockingbird in freshman year language, like grade 9, have
Right.
2 mistakes, use 3 quotes in each paragraph, cite, blah, blah, blah. But here's what we did as staff. We were like, and make the topic about the symbolism of a Snickers bar. And it
Mm.
wrote a whole friggin' paper about a Snickers bar in To Kill a Mockingbird. There was no Snickers bar in To Kill a Mockingbird. They wrote a 5-page paper with quotes.
Yeah.
So we do have this like moment. We have a moment. We have a pause. We have a little bit where we can catch it. There's watermark marks, I guess, and there's ways to see what parts were generated previously on any of the AI systems that are in the world. Because kids have like multiple computers. They're typing on one, copy pasting over, and editing. But and to me, like if you're actually taking that much time to use AI, like you're probably doing it well.
Uh-huh.
Like kudos, as opposed to just dumping it in. But we still have to get the little kids. Like the question is really, I'm an English teacher. At what point does English teaching become unnecessary? And we have to
Mhm.
transition to thinking.
Wow, that's a good point.
Like I don't think 11th and 12th graders need to be in English classes anymore. They need to be reading
Hmm.
and talking and thinking about literature and thinking about cultural perspectives and worldview and all of this. But am I really worried about what their paper looks like and how they've cited? Like the worries need to shift a bit. And I think my grandbabies, I'm pretty sure they're going to be in virtual classrooms with master teachers. They're going to be virtually traveling to wars and listening over the colonels talking about what I don't know what I'm talking about right now, but you know what I mean? It's going to be an immersive classroom experience that's going to be taken even to the inner cities where we can't even pay a good teacher. And teachers like me are going to basically be coaches. We're going to be sitting there
Yeah.
doing the social coaching. And I think through COVID, we realized kids need to be in person live. Like we figured that out, thank goodness. It was almost like a trial.
Right.
So kids need to socialize, but the learning doesn't have to necessarily be the teacher
Yeah,
lectures.
and the learning can definitely, with technology, greatly speed up.
I think that's where the money is going to be.
Yeah. I
Hint,
mean,
hint.
I know, I mean, just an example, I mean, I've been a pastor for many years, still am.
Mm,
And I've got these guys that when I was going to college, I was supposed to take Greek class, all those type of things, and it was
yeah.
just horrible. It
Mhm.
just was not my strength. And so even now, if I want to look up, and a lot of these guys, they'll bring in all the meanings and all the different things, and it's like, oh, it just bogs down to me and all that. But I could sit there now and I could take what normally would have taken me 1, 2, 3 hours of study, and I can just say, okay, in this verse, what's the Greek word for this? Give me the, and what does that at least this mean?
Mhm.
It gives it, and I've got the thing in like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm not dumber for it. I'm actually smarter for it, but uh,
Mhm.
it's I think what you're saying is so key. Do we get so locked in that things have to be a certain way,
Yeah.
like the teaching? Well, this is the way it's always been taught, and this is what a lot of kids are thinking, and we always did. Why am I learning this? I'm not going to use this.
Yeah.
Uh, as long as I can get it done, right? So there's that, maybe that balance there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
As long as you're not afraid, it's exciting.
yeah, exactly. Let's play into another area now. You mentioned financial literacy. This is a big
Mm.
one. Okay.
Yeah.
How'd you get into doing that?
That's a funny one. So I'm terrible with money,
Okay.
and it was a huge fighting point between me and my husband constantly. It's definitely something I knew was a weakness in my marriage.
Okay.
And I was praying fervently about it. And at the time, I was an English teacher and I was teaching a book called The Kite Runner. And in it, a boy is sexually assaulted in the woods. And I'm
Okay.
in a Christian school and I was wrecked. I was like, God tells us to focus on what is good and what is lovely and what is pure. And like there is scripture. And I'm like, why am I putting kids who are at all different developmental levels at
Hmm.
this moment in content that is not appropriate? Like, why are we focusing on this academically? And I was really praying and I'm like, God, I need change. Like, I just don't feel comfortable teaching the content that I've been teaching
Okay.
because I don't have control over curriculum, so I was really worried about that. And that book has since left our curriculum, by the way. I don't think the people who chose it realized what was in it.
Right.
So we had to bring that to we're in a Christian school, which is amazing, by the way, because we like shut that down right away.
Right.
But in the midst of me praying, my principal, he came by and he's like, Dawn, you can teach anything. Like, I really believe that you're just adaptable. If we sent you for training, would you mind teaching this new class, personal financial literacy, that's going to be required for graduation, but it's not yet? So I was
Hmm.
like, okay. So I went home and I told my husband, we both had a really good laugh because that's my weakness. And I was like, you know what? You learn from teaching. And I said, God is sending me to school because I've been asking for wisdom here. I've been asking for change. And so I went back to school and I had to figure this out and I had to teach, and I did it terribly for a few years because I was still learning as I was going. And now I'm like really confident. But at the time, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I had kids who, their parents were the top donors of the school sitting in my class. I'm like, let me tell you about money. No idea what I'm
Right.
doing. But what's so cool is personal financial literacy is required in New Jersey. And
Mm.
it's required in some states. It's starting to become something really important. But I've recognized reading Randy Alcorn and Ron Blue and even Dave Ramsey, even though I'm not always on par with Dave, the Christians need to understand that we have a God of abundance who says, if you are in bondage to your debt, you can't serve me. I can't, when I'm in debt, say, here I am, God, send me, because I can't even afford my plane ticket. I got to stay here and pay my debt and go to work. So once I started to recognize, like, oh, there's so much in the Bible. There's more talk about money than there is about sin or, marriage and stuff like that. Like, this is the number one topic God talks about because it really is the truest essence of who we are, is to see, where do I put my resources? So where am I putting my love, my time, but also my money?
Mm.
I'm going to
Absolutely.
show my values. Mm,
And the other subject we were talking about, anxiety, anxiousness, all these different things. I mean, how much of that is created by a poor money situation? Stress,
mm,
marriages are just, and I love what you're saying. I think that God loves, with his sense of humor, to put us in situations that would be our biggest weakness, and then he'll show his strength through it. I know
mm,
my family, we started in very similar. We started in financial services and business back in 2011. We've been doing that ever since, and
mm,
very, very strong. And it's funny because I was basically, that happened after being pretty much broken in 2008 and absolutely broke and have
mm.
everything just totally fall apart. So it's
Yeah.
just, God has this huge sense of humor where, it's like,
Mhm.
So when I first started doing it, it's like, well, I know I don't have any money and I don't know how to figure this out, so I guess I'll learn something. So that was kind of, the same type of journey. But it's such a major part of life, like you said. It's even in the Bible. It's mentioned, even the parable of the talents, which is not just money, but it's
Mm-mm.
definitely a part of it.
Hmm.
What you do with what you have, and then God will do more with how responsible you are with your stewardship of whatever that is. Uh,
Yeah.
so that where do you see that, especially that's a great addition, I think, to what young people are learning as well, isn't it?
Yeah, well, as part of my life coaching, I really do make that important. It's part of my coaching package even because kids learn confidence that they can do something because money is something that's very tangible. So there's not a lot of things that are super tangible, like losing weight or getting in shape and putting on muscle. Super tangible. I can see that, I can touch it, I can
Yeah,
know change is possible. Whereas changing your brain, it's like, I think it's different. I think different. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's more subjective and it's tricky. But
right.
money is one of those things that if you can get a kid to understand, like compound interest takes time, but it's more about behavior over thinking. It's not about what
Mhm.
you know, it's about what you do. And
Right.
so you don't have to know a lot to do the things. And then as money starts to accumulate, you're going to have more opportunity to do more things. But it just starts very simple. So if you can get kids to understand, like, just do the one thing and you're going to see God move and you're going to see that God has more for you. But
Hmm.
it starts very young. And so that's why I'm all about like, do you have your bank account set up? Are you managing it? Do you have a credit card and are you learning how to handle debt and not overextending your human nature to over borrow? And then do you have a portfolio that you're starting to build? What did you put in it? Did you buy a penny stock or did you buy an index fund? Like, what did you pick and why? And then just figuring out who they want to become, that you want something of substance and that's going to take a foundation that's solid so that God can build on it. And I think that's what's super cool about the teen years. It's like this amazing time that they, and I think to your point, you and me being a little broke, like we had
Hmm.
a medical debt that was over $350,000.
Wow. Yeah.
And I have never been so broke and so scared in my life. And I had to learn. I mean, that school of hard knocks is hard. Like
Sure.
you don't have a choice but to figure it out, or you're gonna have a generation that suffers.
Yeah.
And it's wild. Yeah. We ended up, by the way, being victims of insurance fraud. So I didn't have to pay all of that.
Uh-huh.
But the insurance system is another thing I teach in my finance class because kids need to understand it. It's not safe. Christians need to help people understand it.
Yeah. People can just be eaten alive
Oh,
by things, right? So
sends people to the streets. Yeah.
yeah.
Good,
So
good people.
you're mentioning compound interest, and I guess so that's what we look at in money. I think
Mhm.
life and goals, whether it's financial goals or whatever, even
Yeah.
goals have compound actions, right, which get
Yeah.
us to those things. How does that jive, I guess is a word I could use, with the instant gratification generation?
Yeah, it's hard. It's
Yeah.
very hard for them. There's some cool things though. I mean, again, it goes back to that phone, like
Yeah.
that they can see their money building. It's like that visible evidence that like, oh wait, something is happening here. But
Mhm.
that those first couple years of compound interest are not exciting.
True.
There's nothing sexy about the first 10 years of building your wealth. So it's just trusting it and understanding the process. But that to me is like you have to trust when you get married that your marriage is going to be okay and you just have to do the process until you've been married successfully for 15, 20, 30, 40 years. Like you don't know if you're going to be successful, but it doesn't stop you from trying. And I think it's just such a beautiful metaphor.
Yeah. So having a goal, being goal oriented, do you find that a lot of young people need to be retaught that to
I
actually have a goal?
To have goals, yeah, that's in my month 2 of my curriculum because if you don't have goals, it's actually month 1 if you're in my class in person, but if you don't have goals, you don't know where you're going.
Hmm.
It's like getting in the car and you know where you are, but you don't know where you're going. Are you just going to drive or are you going to put in an address? Like you got to have an address. And then you can pick different ways to get there. And I think what's cool about it is like if kids just, and a lot of times they don't pick big enough. So I make them do career research and we go sometimes backward. Like, what is your goal? Is your goal money? Is your goal service? Is your goal to be in close relation with a certain group of people? Do you have a justice mission? Like, what is your goal? And then let's find jobs that align with who you want to become and the lifestyle you want to have. And then we're going to go backward and figure out the short-term goals. But you have to start long and then go backward. And so I actually have like maps for this. We have process for it because kids don't spend enough time, adults don't spend enough time. If your goal is retirement, people statistically spend more time planning one trip to Disney than they do planning their whole retirement, which is going to be decades.
Yeah, and the one trip to Disney is probably keeping them away from the retirement, right?
Yeah,
Because of all the money
that
that
too.
comes for that.
That
But
too.
but yeah, you're so what you do then, you're like the GPS, right?
Yeah.
There's a destination. Let's see the destination. Now you're at point A, you're going to be getting to point B. We need to map out how you're going to get to point B. Otherwise, you have no idea how to get there. So
Mhm.
so you're kind of helping them navigate that
Yeah.
type of thing, right?
And
Okay.
their goals are always too small.
Yeah, what's with that?
I don't
Is it that they don't feel worthy enough to do something bigger? Is that what it is?
Kids have a very limited view of what's even available to them. Like, they don't really know. Like, if you ask a kid whose dad or mom works in business and you're like, what do they do? And they're like, they get in the car and they sit at a desk. Like, I don't want to do that. They have no idea what people's jobs are. They know
Right.
teachers, they know doctors, they know like the people that they've seen. So really, it's about curiosity. And there's a great website that the government has out. It's the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, which sounds incredibly boring, but it's actually what people are earning doing different jobs, and it tells you how they got there and the ways. So I teach kids how to use that website and adults so that they can help find a career that matches. But the big caution right now is honestly, AI is going to change all of this. These kids are going to go into college and jobs are going to be available right now. And when they exit, that job isn't going to be there. There's going to be a
Right.
different job. So, really, more than anything right now, I think kids need to be resilient.
Hmm.
They're going to have to pivot over and over and over. They've got to be ready to pivot.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't do well with change, right?
No.
So,
Mm-mm. So, I think as a parent, that's going to be your biggest job is
mhm.
making sure that you are mentally resilient and that you don't push your anxieties on the kids, but also teaching your kids to be resilient because like they said, we change jobs. I don't remember how many times our generation changes jobs, but they're predicting that these kids are going to change jobs horizontally and vertically, even changing companies, but doing the same thing at least 30 to 35 times, which I think is a lowball estimate because of how many people are working contract work.
30 to 35 times. I can't even
They have to
imagine.
interview. They got to be really confident. And I have a whole interview unit. I actually get down to like, how do you personally brand yourself? How do people perceive you? How do you capitalize on that very quickly to capture their attention and be magnetic? How do you even wear a cross? That like, why would you to an interview? Like, do you want to or not? And we weigh all of this. We talk about what your handshake communicates, what your resume and cover letters should be like. I mean, we really get, and then I put them through a mock interview in my class. Like they literally have to shake hands with me. They are fully interviewed. They don't know what I'm going to ask. They do all the interview prepping ahead of time. Because I'm like, if I give you anything, I need to give you the tool to adapt and be resilient because I
Sure.
don't know what the world is going to look like.
And what about we were already discussing, so this ability to have that type of interview, the ability to have that kind of conversation. So for example, right now we're having a conversation. I didn't give you these questions ahead of time. You kind of told me your subjects, whatever, and we basically said, hey, we're just going to go in and we're just going to do it. So
Yeah.
I'm listening to you, you're listening to me, we're responding. We're, if we were more in the same room, there'd be better eye contact. We're looking at screens right now.
Mm,
But we're able to do that. A lot of the kids with the technology and stuff, they're not even able to look somebody in the eye and have that conversation.
mm, yeah. So much has to do with the culture of how they were raised. I mean, our school just went phone free this week.
Okay.
And it is,
Wow, there must be crying going on.
oh, one kid, it's, one
Crying.
kid walked in and he's like, I am so tired. He's a little freshman. So cute. He's like, I just want my phone. But then other kids are like, whatever, I don't even care. But there's like a full spectrum. But what
Mhm.
I'm noticing in 1 week is my classrooms are noisier when they're walking in. They're laughing and talking to each other and looking at each other. They used to just sit down at their desk and like whip out the phone between class. And then when I started, they would look up and put it away. And now they don't have that. And I'm finding that they're even sitting on each other's desk before class and like talking. It's like the 90s all over again. I'm like, what is going on? This is exciting. Kids, I keep saying this, kids are not the problem. The
Right.
system they're being raised in is the problem. And I wish schools were just braver. I wish parents were braver. Like the pushback on it is mostly parent fear. It's what am I going to do if I can't reach my kid? What if there's an emergency and they can't call me? What if somebody's bullying them and they can't reach out to somebody who's safe like me? It usually comes back to me with the parent. And then it's really honestly very interesting. So parents need to just do some self-assessing, self-evaluating. Like, what is
Yeah.
your goal? That's all, because you didn't know what was about to happen. Nobody's judging. I'm not judging parents at all. This is a hard, hard time to be a parent. But we also now are starting to see the ramifications, and we need to own up to it and go, okay, I may have to do the hard thing, and my kid is not going to like me, but you know what? That's not your job. They have a lot of people they can be friends with. You're not the friend. You're the one who's going to discipline. I mean, if you look at the rod in the Bible, the shepherd's rod with the hook, that hook was designed to hook around a sheep that was going astray and pull him in closer. It was there to
Right.
create a line, like, don't go off the cliff, you dumb sheep. You're going to die. It's to
Uh,
hold back things that are dangerous, like briars that could get caught. It's designed to protect. Everybody thought it was like to beat the sheep. Why would you beat a sheep? That's your money. Like, that's your bread and butter, your sheep. You're not beating them with a rod. You're keeping them safe, but navigating. You're moving them from one location to another. And they will know you by your rod. They will know you by your discipline. They will know you because you feel safe. If your child feels safe when you're disciplining, you're doing it right. And leaving them open to all things. If you're picking a good school, your child is safe. If you don't feel safe with the school, that's your problem with the school. You need to go talk to the school. And
Absolutely.
that is a conversation parents need to have. You need to be involved with your school, because schools are run by parents. I know they think it's run by the government, but it's not. The decision making is held by PTO moms and dads who are in the school, seeing the problem, bringing it up to the board, moving agendas through. Every parent needs to be in a school. And if you can't, volunteer, go stand on the
Right.
playground, go serve some burgers. Like, you have to be part of this 8 hours of every day that your child is sitting there. You need to know. So don't be afraid to go to the school. But
Yeah.
the child is going to be okay if we have everybody on board disciplining. It's tough, though. It's tough. It takes a lot of effort.
Yeah. That effort. Well, let's shift. This has been a great conversation. We've handled a lot of things here and everything. Let me just ask you, for you, what are some of the goals and dreams that God's still showing you as you're moving forward?
Mm. Like in my company or in the school, or
All
I've
of
got
it.
a lot
I mean,
going on.
yeah. So maybe it's hard to narrow it down, but if
Yeah.
you if it, this is just a crazy question. So if you were to design it yourself of what's going to happen in the next 10 years, what would it be?
Mm. I want to be speaking to parents on stages. God told me when I was 22 that I'd be speaking to people from a stage, teaching them how to take back ownership of their life.
Okay.
I think that we have given Satan too much power in the
Hmm.
schools, in our homes, in our head. And so I just want to empower women in particular, but men, I think more and more, to really understand that if you work really hard for a little while, it gets easier. The first 4 years raising my kids was hard. I laid down strong foundations. I was using that rod. I was figuring out my marriage. It takes about 3 or 4 years, I see, to really get on one page and to really be equally yoked with your spouse. And as soon as kids come in, you almost like start over with figuring out that 4 years, because it does change all the dynamics. So you really do have to be ready for that. But if you could be ready, the power of a man and a woman pulling a family, which is going to create generational futures. It's powerful. So I really want to empower men to understand their role in the family, to empower women to go back maybe a little bit to the biblical definition of what it is to be a wife
Uh-huh.
and a mom, and then to understand that it's actually easier.
Hmm.
I feel like being alone is so hard, and we are a lonely society. So if I could do anything, I would be speaking. My kids are going to be like, they're going to college in the next 2 years. So my last two, my other one's married and he's got a house, and things are starting to line up that I'm free to start moving around.
Right.
And then I really want to have a strong coaching practice where I've got a lot of kids just changing their life around. I'm tired of the vaping. I'm tired of the anxiety. I'm tired of them feeling stuck. So I just want to
Yeah.
break everybody free. That's what I want. Total
And,
energy
and
forward.
and you mentioned that this was something that was put in your heart many years ago. And I'm thinking of I really like in Ephesians where it's talking about God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above that which we could ask or think. And
Yeah.
so a lot of times I do believe that when God puts things in our heart, even way back then, and then everything that he's done in your life, I'm sure between then and now has all been important and also building up towards that what he put in your heart to keep on doing. So I'm sure that it's going to be pretty awesome, some pretty big things coming up. And
Thank
hopefully you'll be able to communicate to many more young people and families as well to have that same type of mindset that, it's not just us trying to make it happen. If God's put it in your heart, he will
you.
put you in that position and to move forward towards it in faith. Um, as far as, let's close up with this. If people are interested in the coaching that you've mentioned and the programs that you have, if they're interested possibly in getting in contact with you, what are some
Mhm.
of the best ways to do that?
Oh, okay. Well, everything's on my website. So www.selffoundry.com. So Self Foundry. Everything's on there. My podcast is linked up. My email, like signing up for my emails, even my phone number to reach out for coaching. I really love, and it's honestly with your kids, it's a 3 month turnaround. I am seeing it so fast. Your kids, when they understand something, they're like eager to just try it, just try, because it's the hope. And so it's not, I do not want your kids in years and years of therapy. I do believe you can get life coaching for years. I mean, I don't think that it ends, but you
Mhm.
don't need it. And so I will never hold your family hostage in endless therapy. This is a reboot, it's a kickstart. It's open your eyes, try something new. We're going to get that energy, and then you're going to choose your future forward. And that's really what I really hope works the best for people, because God is fast. You call upon that Holy Spirit, it's a whoosh. And
Yeah.
in that, if you are at all concerned, that's my big thing. If you're concerned about your child's spiritual life and they are a teenager and they are nearing college in particular, you are running out of time to have a major influence. So in my program, is the salvation message. It's how to know God on a different level, because we only have a small window of time. And one of my podcasts, my early podcasts, is all about surrendering your children to God. You have to practice the surrender, but it is that knocking, 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 and you need to be knocking for a child's semester, like their salvation. You need to knock, and so I want to be one of the tools for your child to possibly hear it in a different way.
Awesome.
So
So
it's all there.
if you've been, I encourage you, if you've been blessed or encouraged or it's been provoking your thoughts as you listen to this podcast today, make sure you go onto her website, reach out to Dawn, see what's happening. I love what you just said. A big change can happen just in 3 months.
Fast.
In 3 months. It's not like it's going to take years and years and years to see some improvement, to see some change. So your kids, your teens, your families obviously are worth it. Uh,
Mhm.
take a step, um, investigate here, see what's available, and I'm sure Dawn will get back to you and be happy to help you. As you can already tell, this is her big mission of what she wants to do. So Dawn, thank you so much for the time that you spent today. I've enjoyed it. I know it's going to be a blessing to so many people, and we look forward to seeing what God's going to keep doing through you in the future.
Thank you. Me too. I'm excited, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, everyone, this has been the Audacious Faith Podcast. Be sure you share this episode with somebody else as well that you think will benefit from it. And if you have not subscribed, we want to encourage you to go ahead and do that. We'll have many other great episodes coming up in the near future as well. So make sure you're on that list, and we will see you next time. God bless.